Welcome to our channel, Behind My Story. Please like, share and subscribe.
Love what you do until you can do what you love. This is a famous quote that inspires people to seek out their dream job. I heard that quote at school before I graduated and entered the working world. What's that, you ask? Was I successful in achieving my dream? Well, I came this close. Let me tell you about it. My name is Max and I'm 19 years old. Poverty and I are intimate friends and constant companions. I live in one of the poorest neighborhoods in my city. Most of the local citizens work at the seaport. The rest of us, we make a living by scavenging through and collecting rubbish. But I wasn't just an ordinary rubbish collector. No, sir, I was a specialist in that field, like my dad before me. Dad taught my brothers and me how to do it expertly. This is how it worked. Factories liked to use recycled materials to reduce the cost of buying new materials, so we would go to the city rubbish pile and separate out materials into different piles, such as plastics, glass bottles, milk cartons, tin cans, and so on. Then we would sell those materials to factories for reuse in making their products. This recycling process saved the factories a ton of money, but unfortunately, that didn't translate into a ton of money for us rubbish collectors. I had a dream one day of opening my own factory and just sitting back and watching the money flow in. When I told Dad that, he told me that good fortune only happens for a select few people. After hearing those words, I went to bed and dreamed about my future factory. Little did I suspect that my dream might actually come true someday. One day after working late collecting rubbish, while on the way home, I suddenly heard voices coming from a large rubbish pile in front of my home. It seemed that people were using that pile as a place of business to sell drugs and booze. An argument was brewing between two groups. Each group were wielding sticks and knives as makeshift weapons. One guy in Group A had a gun and shot someone in Group B, so someone in Group B stabbed gun guy in Group A. After that, a full-on fight ensued, with everyone in both groups joining in the fray. Within minutes, I heard approaching police sirens, which caused the fight to break up and both groups to run away, leaving the bleeding gun guy lying on the sidewalk. I tried to help him by staunching his bleeding. As I was doing so, I noticed a lottery ticket beside him with a letter saying that it was the winning ticket for $1 million payout. I froze. I looked around. No one was watching, so I acted, somewhat ignobly. Then I left quickly. If the police were to arrive and find me with the bleeding man, they might think that I had done it. I rushed home and fell into an easy chair, taking a deep breath of relief. While I was telling Dad about what had happened, there was a knock on the door. It was the Group A and B gangs. The spokesperson for the two groups held a knife in my direction and said, "Hand over the lottery ticket or die where you stand." Needless to say, I handed it over post-haste. But then he said, "I'm sorry. You've seen too much. You have to die." I pleaded, "But I didn't see anything, I swear." Suddenly, there was a flash from a camera, and the whole group of thugs began laughing. "You've been pranked," Dad said, as he stepped out from the crowd. My brothers were behind him laughing too. "You've been pranked," Dad said, as he stepped out from the crowd. My brothers were behind him laughing too. While relieved that my imminent death had been postponed, I was deeply saddened that I had lost my $1 million chance to get my dream factory. What rubbish.
My name is Nathan. I'm a 40-year-old businessman who runs an import-export company. I lived with Mom and Dad and my brother Sam. Some siblings coexist peacefully, some fight all the time, and some hate each other. Sam and I ended up in this latter category because our decisions shape our lives. Let me tell you our story. I worked hard and made good decisions to be successful in life. This contrasted with my lazy brother who wanted easy money without having to work for it. This was a sore point between us. We fought all the time, and the situation was exacerbated by Dad's unexpected death by heart attack. Sam and I took over Dad's business and became partners. Soon, though, Sam thought the business was too much work, so he decided to work abroad for bigger wages and less work, presumably. I begged him to work locally and stay close to the family, but he couldn't be persuaded. So he gave up his share in the business and left to work abroad, and I ran the business as sole proprietor. As I gained experience and business acumen, the business prospered and grew as I earned the customer's trust. As my profits grew, Mom and I moved into a bigger house. Mom wanted me to get married and have kids, and I wanted to make her wish come true. So I found a beautiful girl and married her. She was a blessing to us. When she became pregnant, Mom was ecstatic. We learned that it would be a baby boy, so we chose a name for him, John. As her pregnancy progressed from trimester to trimester, the strain on her body was obvious, but finally, the baby was born, and Mom and I were thrilled to see her only grandchild and my only child, respectively, growing up day by day. I wanted to teach him everything, and I wanted him to be brave. Our lives were content, peaceful, and fulfilled. At one point, I decided to grow the company by opening up some more stores. It was a challenging project, but was necessary to remain competitive with our rivals. Our wealth and good fortune continued to grow, and I bought a new villa for us. Mom, wife, and son. One evening shortly after that, we invited friends over to celebrate moving into our new villa. As we were celebrating, friends were wishing us the best. John was playing and running around everywhere and being a little naughty at times, and everything was going smoothly. Then suddenly, the lights went out for a couple of minutes, and then came back on. This was unusual, but not wanting to worry the guests, I told them that it was a normal glitch that happened once in a while. Still, as a precaution, I called for all the children to gather around me. All were present, except for John. We searched everywhere for him, but couldn't find him. We were all worried about what had happened to him. Then, one of my friends shouted that there was a phone call for me. When I took the phone, a voice on the other end said, "Don't worry about your little prince. He's okay, and he'll stay that way as long as you send us $100,000. Otherwise..." Then the caller hung up. My friends tried to calm me down, but I was frantic with worry. Who would want to kidnap my son? If I gave them the money, what assurance did I have that they would return my son? Then I got angry. They needed to be punished for this heinous deed. So I called a friend who was a police officer and asked him for help. He said he could put a small tracking device in the money bag so they could track my movements and hopefully catch these kidnap for ransom thugs. While it was a neat plan, it was also extremely dangerous if the kidnappers were to find out and escape from our trap. After a couple of days, the thugs called and told me where to meet them with the money. It was a location in the northern part of the country, a forest with dense trees and tall grass, a place that would be easy to escape into and hide. So I got the money, put it in the car, and drove to the agreed-upon meeting place. When I reached the location, a car was there waiting. I parked close to it and exited the car with the money bag in hand. The driver of the other car stepped out. It was Sam. Sam? I thought you were working abroad, I said. I was, but the work was too hard, so I quit and came back, Sam replied. How can you kidnap and ransom your own nephew, I asked. Sam laughed and said, You misunderstand. I've just returned to take my share of the money. What money are you talking about, I asked. Sam sneered. The money you took from me in running Dad's business. I tried to connect the dots. I said, Sam, you were half owner of the business, but then you gave up your ownership to go work abroad. You haven't done anything to earn any money from the business. Sam kept sneering. I want my share of the profits. Shut up, give me the money, and you'll get your son back. I gave him the money, he released John, and John ran into my arms crying. I asked John if Sam had hurt him, but he said no. After Sam took possession of the money, the police revealed themselves and moved in to surround us. Using a megaphone, they commanded him to surrender, but he ran into the woods instead. The policemen closed in and pursued him, but they lost him in the woods. He had escaped. I returned home with John, and my wife hugged him and cried tears of joy that he had been returned safe and unharmed. Mom asked me who did this. I hesitated. Should I tell her the truth? I decided to do so. She was horrified. A few days later, I received a letter. It was from Sam asking if I was ready for the next payment of my debt to him. I was dismayed and fearful at the same time. Sam had decided to be a villain against his own family, and I had decided to fight back against him tooth and nail. Decisions shape our lives.
Hi there, I'm Carl and I'm 19 years old. I live with my grandpa on his farm on the outskirts of the city. Grandpa is fond of nature and quietude, as these calm his soul and spirit. He loves cultivating flowers and is very skilled in this field. He reads numerous books on unusual species of flowers, including their planting and growing requirements. he can also extract perfume fragrances from flowers. At first, I didn't care about this hobby of his and viewed it as a waste of time. However, after talking with him many times at length and listening to his myriad descriptions of the beauty of nature and flowers, I became hooked on them myself. Now I am as passionate as he is about them, and I love to study and learn about exotic and rare flowers. One of Grandpa's friends happened to be a botanist. He could talk for hours about rare flowers, even imaginary ones depicted in science fiction movies. One evening after he had visited our home and left, we went into the kitchen to prepare dinner when suddenly there came a knock at our front door. I answered the door, but no one was there. Nothing save a small box with a card, which I dutifully carried to Grandpa. The card said simply, "A gift from a dear friend." So we opened the box to find some strange seeds that were unlike any that Grandpa had ever seen before. He read another part of the note. "This is a Yasni flower from the future. Get ready for a fantastical, unforgettable trip." We didn't really believe this silly message, but we decided, what the heck, let's plant them and see what happens. In just 3 days, the seeds had produced exotic-looking purple flowers. Grandpa plucked one to extract some perfume from it. It had a wonderfully fragrant smell. Suddenly, I felt enervated and listless. My vision blurred, I couldn't breathe, and I became dizzy and passed out. When I opened my eyes, I was in the middle of some unknown desert. There were unfamiliar-looking parked cars with people in unfamiliar-looking clothes. One of the strangers pointed at me in alarm and shouted, "Catch him!" I ran, but they surrounded me and caught me. They bound my hands and hung me from a horizontal tent frame. I heard a groan and looked to my left to see Grandpa, similarly bound and hanging from another tent frame. The strangers were speaking in a language I had never heard before. Their apparent leader came over to us and said, "See this desert? The entire world is like this. Because of you. You destroyed our world. Our future is dark and bleak now. Those Yasni flowers you planted ended up breeding out of control and destroyed the world. You need to pay for your foul deeds." Suddenly, I heard a gunshot. Someone had shot Grandpa in the chest. He was bleeding profusely and appeared to be unconscious or dead. I couldn't tell which. I screamed, and then the shooter came towards me with hatred blazing in his eyes. He stopped and placed his gun barrel to my forehead. I screamed, "No!" and closed my eyes tightly. After a pause and hearing no shot, I opened my eyes to find myself lying on the floor beside Grandpa, the plucked flower lying between us. I woke him up and told him about my dream and found that he had had the exact same dream. He called his botanist friend and described the seeds, the flower, and its fragrance to him. The botanist said the unknown flower sounded similar to one that grew high in the Swiss Alps. It was illegal to import because it was known to induce hallucinations and cause other unpredictable reactions in people. To this day, we have no idea who the dear friend was that sent us these unusual, hallucinogenic flowers. We figure it must have been someone's idea of a practical joke. Or were these Yasni flowers indeed sent to us from the future?